Hi everyone, so I'm going to have a look at something today which I do get asked about quite a lot, which is about how to approach reading Shakespeare. I have a lot of students that seem to really kind of freak out when it comes to reading Shakespeare, and they tend to say, "Oh, I can't read Shakespeare." And I'm going to try and show you today that actually it doesn't matter if you don't understand all of Shakespeare, because not many of us do. So we'll go through it. We'll go through a couple of approaches as well about how to tackle it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at three extracts, and they're all going to be related to Lord Capulet, because I think that he's actually one of the easiest characters to take a look at and to break down, because there's usually quite a lot of emotion in his monologues and his conversation with characters. So I think it's quite a nice character to have a look at when it comes to analysing and breaking down Shakespearean language. Okay, so just take a minute, just pause the video. I usually say, pause the video when you need to. And I just want you to have a work at, what do you think is happening in this scene? Okay, which is usually the dreaded question. Usually when I read some Shakespeare with my pupils, I'm like, right, okay, so what happened? And then I usually get blank faces. So we want to try and work on that idea of not being scared to, giving it a go. Okay, so just pause this video, read through the extract, and write down what you think is happening. Okay, so this extract is taken from Act 1, Scene 2, and whenever they give you an extract in the exam, there's always a little kind of very small blurb that goes. In terms of this one, Lord Capulet and Paris are discussing Paris's desire to marry Capulet's young daughter, Juliet. The question that we're going to be looking at when we're approaching this analysis is, how is Lord Capulet presented as a loving father in this extract? I personally actually find it really hard to analyse an extract without a clear question in mind, but because it just enables you to kind of focus your analysis. So if you're ever struggling, you're trying to annotate an extract on your own, if I were you, I would just try and come up with a question to do with a theme or a character in the extract that you're trying to focus on, because that usually gives you something a bit more, to be able to hone in on in terms of your analysis. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take a different approach to it. We're going to think, what are the words that we don't understand, and we're just going to cross them out, nice and simple. So if you kind of go through it, there's some bits that you really kind of don't need to know about in terms of this question. So it starts off talking about Montague, and talking about keeping the peace. Well, that's not really to do with Lord Capulet being a good father. So we're going to get rid of some of these. So we're going to get rid of that one. We're going to get rid of that one. We're going to get rid of that one. Paris then talks about this honourable reckoning, are you both? 'Tis pity you've lived at odds so long. So he's saying, it's a shame that you've argued for so long. But that's not important. You don't need to know that. Okay, but actually this is where Paris starts honing in on talking about Juliet. But now, my lord, what say you? So all of you can understand that, what are you saying, basically, is what he's saying. Now, there's some words in here you might not understand, so you might not know that "o'er" means over, but there are some words that we are definitely going to know. So we're just going to get rid of the words that we might not know. So we might not know what that word means. We know what I have said before means. It's what I've talked about before. We all know what a stranger is. We all know what my child means. So we're just going to get rid of some of the ones that you might not know. You might not know what "wither in their pride" means, but actually you can work out "let two more summers pass," basically. So he's saying, she's only 14, which I've left on the screen. But if we can let two more summers go, means if we can have 2 more years, then I think she's going to be ripe to be a bride. So ripe is in like when fruit is ripe. When fruit is ripe, it's ready to eat. So it's that idea, she's gonna be ready to be a bride. We all can understand younger than she, a happy mother's maid. It's just worded in a slightly old-fashioned way. So, younger than Juliet, there's people that are already moms and they're happy. There is a word here you might struggle with, which is marred. Too soon marred, although it's early made. Marred is quite a good word to use. I'm going to use it later actually when I'm doing some analysis. Marred almost means kind of like blemished, or if she becomes a mom too early, it could kind of mar her. It could kind of make her unhappy, for example. But there are some really, really interesting bits here for us to look at. She's the hopeful lady of my earth. So even if you can just zoom in on that word hopeful, you've got some really, really good stuff to analyse, which is what we're going to focus on. Okay, so now actually, even though we've crossed out quite a bit, there's actually a lot here to analyse. We're going to have a look at an extract later on where we're going to look at even less. But even, knowing these bits, more than capable of analysing it. So what we try and think is, don't get bogged down if you don't understand it. At the end of the day, we didn't live in Shakespeare's time, so you're never going to understand everything that he writes. And that's fine. I think if you take that pressure away from you, instantly Shakespeare just becomes easier to understand. To be honest with you, it's more about knowing where in the plot this comes. If you can know the plot, it then becomes way easier when it comes to analysing. Because if you're like, oh yeah, this is it where they're talking about Juliet, potentially marrying Paris, then all of a sudden you're like, actually, yeah, I can see where that line fits in. So it's more about knowing the plot, which we'll talk about. Okay, so in this approach we're going to do now, we're just going to think about positive and negative words. So, stranger is quite a clear negative word. If you knew what the word marred meant, it's quite a negative word. And they've got quite a few positive words as well. So happy, heart, hopeful, woo. So as in, woo her, gentle Paris means, like make her fall in love with you if you want. To give consent is to give permission. So I've said that's quite positive because he wants Juliet to be able to give consent. And then welcome as well. So what I then do is I think, is there more positive words or is there more negative words? So here there is more positive words. So for me, that's going to, start to make me think actually Juliet's father is being presented as a good father, because there's more positive words. Okay, obviously that's not an exact science, but that's, quite an easy way of getting into looking at positive and negative connotations, which is going to get you your AO2 marks. Okay. Now let's think which of these words is relevant to the question. Okay, so for example, we might have a look at hopeful, that idea that he's saying that she's this hopeful lady, Juliet's fantastic. And, if he's being positive about his daughter, he's more likely going to be presented as a good father, as a loving father in this extract. But if we, maybe look at some of the other quotes, like stranger in the world, although stranger is a negative word, he is actually saying it in a way that's going to protect her. Okay, so we'll move on in a second. Okay, right, let's go forward then. So now let's have a think about what these words are showing. Okay, so stranger world, this shows that Lord Capulet is just trying to protect his daughter. You could really easily look at the connotations of stranger there, thinking about Juliet's vulnerability. There's a lot to look at with stranger. This shows that Lord Capulet loves her a great deal, looking at hopeful lady my earth. In terms of the marred quote, this shows that Lord Capulet is trying to protect his daughter. And then this quote, I think it's just cut off a little bit by the video. This shows that Lord Capulet cares about his daughter because he's allowing her to give permission, to give consent, and that is the quote that I'm going to look at, because I think there's quite a lot there contextually that I can start. Okay then, so step 5 then is to write a paragraph based on one or more of these quotes, because you might want to drop in one-word quotes from elsewhere but focus on one in particular. So I'm going to say that it's clear that Shakespeare wants to present Lord Capulet as a loving father in this extract by showing that he cares about Juliet's opinion. This is evidenced in the quote, "My will to her consent is but a part." In this quote, Shakespeare has Lord Capulet explain to Paris that it is important to him for Juliet to consent to the marriage, with this being integral to Paris's potential marriage to her. In Elizabethan England, many wealthy families would have simply married their daughters off for financial, political and social gain. However, at this point in the play, it would appear that Lord Capulet shows his love for Juliet through the way he defies social convention to empower her to make the choice herself. Quite a long sentence. Although this is contradicted later in the play, it's clear that at this point, Shakespeare wants the audience to imagine Lord Capulet as a loving father. Okay, so we've ticked off answering the question, so AO1, because we've clearly shown that he is a loving father in this particular quote, and AO1 in terms of picking out a quote as well. AO2, because you've started to break this quote down, talked about how it's looking at the individual words, such as consent. We could have done a little bit more with AO2. We haven't looked at any particular techniques, but it's the way we've kind of broken it down that's going to get us our AO2 marks. But again, we could have gone one step further with that. We could start to, pair it up with other quotes and look at the cumulative effect. But we have really ticked off AO3 here as well, because we've talked about Elizabethan England. We've talked about our understanding of social convention and things like that. Again, we could be more specific, but generally this is a good start. We are, looking at the clear band here. It's not the most perceptive of paragraphs, but we are, trying to get into that clear band first and foremost. Okay, so now we're going to try a slightly different approach. This emoji looks quite excited, but we'll approach. Right, okay then. So now if you could just pause the video and then do the exact same thing, read through this extract and write down what's happening in the scene. Okay, so this is taken from Act 3, Scene 5. So we fast forwarded from Act 1, Scene 2 to Act 3, Scene 5. Now, obviously, quite a lot has happened in the play at this point. This is a very fast-paced play. Things happen super quickly. Lots of people die. Lots of people, kind of fall in and out of love very quickly. So it's that idea that, that we want to think actually now, how has our perception of Lord Capulet changed? Okay. Lord Capulet has now found out that Juliet is refusing to marry Paris. So we've kind of, these extracts are really interesting to look at side by side, because we've gone from Lord Capulet being like, it's fine, like, I'm gonna let Juliet choose. He sounds quite relaxed about it. And then in this extract, he's just turns a bit kind of crazy, and really verbally assaults and threatens to physically assault Juliet as well. So the question now is, how is Lord Capulet presented as a bad father, which I thought was quite a good kind of contrast. So we're going to flip our approach now. We're not going to look, instead of looking at words we don't understand, we're literally just going to pick out a couple we do understand. And this extract is really good to do it in. This one I've done quite a lot with different classes, because there's some really, really nice, easy words to have a look at. Okay, so straight away, we all know what how means. It's like if someone's really angry and they keep repeating the same thing over and over again. We all know what the word drag thee means. If you're struggling with thee, you know that drag is something that's a physical action. You know there's a verb that you can have a look at. If you think, would I rather be dragged out the house, or would I be, would prefer to walk out the house? We're all going to say walk. Okay, so you know it's got those kind of violent connotations there. Disobedient, if you've heard of people, they've got dogs that send them on obedience classes before, then you can apply that knowledge here. So it's disobedience, is saying, she's not obeying her father. And the last one, which is the one that I'm going to focus on, because I think that, in your own time, you might want to have a look at drag thee, for example. I'm going to have a look at, we have a curse in having her. Okay, so these all really, really show that this word pattern here shows that he is extremely angry at Juliet. Okay, so all the time I'm thinking, what are the emotions behind the words? How can I use these to help me answer the question? Okay, so I've just picked out the word curse here in particular, and I've just kind of added some of the ideas outside of the text that might relate to these words. What do I know about the word curse that I can apply? It implies a sense of permanence, of something that will last forever. A curse is, in other literature, is an affliction that cannot be fixed often. Often someone that is cursed, it's a lifelong thing. It's also associated with witches, and it's got connotations of the supernatural as well. So there's quite a lot to unpack there. I know that I could, write about witches at the time. However, I'm gonna, try and stay really focused on the question. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write about it in this way. So again, here's the question about him being a bad father now, not a loving one, a bad father. Lord Capulet is presented as a bad father in this extract due to the way in which he speaks about his daughter. Shakespeare has him use negative words such as disobedient and cursed to show his disdain for his daughter's refusal to marry Paris. In the quote, we have a curse in having her. Shakespeare demonstrates how Lord Capulet views Juliet's disobedience as being so rebellious and outrageous that they will forever mar his relationship with her. So it's that idea of, that affliction being forever. The word curse in particular implies a sense of permanence. In literature, curses are often depicted as lifelong afflictions. So I'm showing off my knowledge from outside of the text. To state that in having Juliet, Lord and Lady Capulet have a curse shows that how Lord Capulet is not able to listen to Juliet's opinions without exploding with anger. This hyperbolic line, okay, so again, I'm just trying to get some AO2 in there, so, you know, this over-exaggerating, basically. This hyperbolic line demonstrates how he is quick to verbally assault her, forever ruining their relationship. It's therefore clear to see that Shakespeare wants to portray him as a short-tempered bad father in this extract, one that is vastly different from the father presented to us in Act 1, Scene 2. Okay, so you can see here I'm trying to show off my vocab, I'm trying to really, really clearly answer the question. And now I'm being pushed closer up into that perceptive band because I'm bringing in real life ideas and trying to come up with some clever ideas here. If I can kind of try and be perceptive in other places as well, that will kind of firmly put me into this perceptive band. No, you do only have to be perceptive once in your answer, but the rest of it needs to be very, very strongly clear and, you know, erring on that clear to perceptive band because we want to get into the top band, obviously. Okay, so you can see here then both of the approaches I've taken have worked. One of them is to cross out the lines I don't understand, and the other one is just to literally hone in on the words that, you know, the individual words I really do understand, like drag and curse and disobedient. But you know, my top tips for reading Shakespeare are make sure you've revised the plot. Okay, if you know the plot, you know where these extracts come from, then you're always going to have something to talk about. Number 2, focus on the words you know and ignore the words that you don't. And number 3, if you're really struggling, think about other words, positive or negative. I often get my students just write a little plus or minus next to the words as they read through the extract when they're close reading. But hopefully that was helpful for you. And what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to ask you to have a go at analysing an extract taken from Act 4, Scene 5, so you can have a go on your own using some of those top tips. Hopefully it'll help you doing it. And this is where the Capulets and Paris react to Juliet's death, which they don't know is fake yet. So just hit pause and have a go at analysing this extract in response to this question, and then have a go at writing up in a paragraph. Okay, hope that was helpful.